Welcome back, everybody. We're still here in the garage. We've got Tony from Turner Concepts, but if you watched the previous video, you might have noticed that the car has changed. This is not the Time Attack STI that Turner Concepts has built. This is actually a Tesla. And Tesla, in fact, or Tony, in fact, this is your Tesla.
Yep.
And you're running this Tesla in Gridlife.
Yep, so this is my wife's daily driver. It's the one that we do a lot of road trips in and go get groceries in and just kind of tool around town in. But yeah, I also, keeping with the theme of street car, I run this in the street class for Gridlife.
Well, given all the other cars you've built, the race cars you guys have built and driven, when you got in this car and drove it for the first time, I mean, what was your initial impression? Was it fun? Did you see potential there? Like, what made you decide to take this car out to Gridlife?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, every time they ride this for the first time, you feel that acceleration hit. You feel the pit of your stomach just kind of gets sucked through the back into the back seat. It's so much torque. So that's the first thing that you always feel. It's a lot of fun, right up to about 60 miles an hour. Okay. This is the Model 3 Performance, so it'll do 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds. So it's a really fast car up until that point. And that was one of the reasons that I was excited about it, and then it was trying to understand the dynamics of weight placement and balance to try to understand how that would affect the handling of the car, and just looking at the future of performance automobiles and performance cars and where we're going, and whether you like it or not, the future is quickly approaching.
This 20 years from now, there's probably going to be a lot more electric cars than non-electric cars out there. So it's definitely the direction things are headed.
And I wanted to see what it was like to be able to have an electric car and modify it, take it to the track, do all the things that I would normally do with most of my other cars, but in an electric vehicle fashion, and see if it still could fit that form that I was used to, that fun factor that I was used to.
The first time you took it out, I mean, did it have some like little inklings that like there's something here, or was it a little bit more of a handful than you expected the first time?
Actually, it was great. So I took this out on track for the first time the week that I bought it. I got it in October of 20, and in October of 20, I took it out to Mid-Ohio, which is about 2.5 hours from where I live in Cincinnati. And I was like, I got to see what it's like. I have to get some baseline data to know what this car is like on track. And I was honestly surprised by it. Most stock cars that I take out, even really fun stock cars, most people think are fun stock cars, to me are not really that much fun because you can't drive them at the limit like you want to. There's still something about them. They still understeer. They still don't just dynamically feel very responsive or agile. I immediately felt the weight balance of this car and the placement of that weight being very low in the chassis of the car. And it was honestly really exciting when I first got it out. Even in stock form, which is far from that now, it still did really well from a lap time perspective, and it was a blast to drive.
Interesting. So like, that was that kind of like the inspiration? Like, okay, now I'm going to look at the series. I'm going to see what I can actually do with this.
Yeah, I didn't really initially when I bought it have any idea that I would run it in Gridlife. That wasn't the point. The point was just to see what it was like. Start to modify it, start to understand a car like this. And very quickly, kind of through some of my own race cars not quite being ready for competition, it turned into, well, I've got this, let's take it out on track and see how it does. And it did well.
From not having driven one of these on track, I mean, the questions that I've always had is, one, how much do you feel the weight? Because these are not light cars because of the batteries. They weigh a lot. And like it's an electric motor. There's a computer that is interfacing between the throttle and everything that the car is doing. How much does that come into play, or does it?
I think like any other car that you drive, there is kind of a balance to it all, right? So initially when you drive it, I felt it was very good and I thought it was a lot of fun. But then you're still like, well, if I do this and this, it'll make it a little bit better. And every little thing that I've done has made all of that better. You feel the weight a little bit less. It grips a little bit better. It goes a little bit faster. It has a little bit better traction coming out of corners. You still can't get around the fact that it's 4,200 pounds with me in the driver's seat. It's a heavy car, and you still feel that weight. I mean, even though that weight is very low, the car doesn't roll as much as some cars do. But when you hustle it into a fast, high-speed corner, you can still tell there's a whole lot of weight that's moving the car. And especially from Gridlife's perspective in the class that I run, you can only run 255 wide tires, and it's got to be 200 tread wear, tires at a minimum. That's a pretty narrow tire to support 4,200 pounds.
Right.
So they overheat very quickly. It really punishes the tires. They don't last very long on this car.
I bet.
And you feel it. It's a squirmy car.
Is that weight, especially with what you're doing with it in Gridlife, the weight and then the tire is the limiting factor? Is that the biggest issue that you run into?
I would say from an outright speed perspective, that is one of them. Probably my biggest issue with the car compared to the other top contenders in the class is I don't have enough power to keep up. Which is interesting because most people say, oh, like, the Teslas are so fast. They're the fastest cars that are out on the road. The Model S Plaid does 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize is that in most of the Teslas, outside, excluding the Plaid, they accelerate very quickly to 60, and they accelerate kind of slowly thereafter. So while they still have power, because of the way the electric motor makes torque, it makes all of its torque right when you hit the throttle at 0 RPMs, when you're not moving, and then the torque curve immediately starts to fall off. So as it does that, that means that the horsepower also falls off, and your top speed falls off the longer you rev it up.
Right.
So in a track like Mid-Ohio, where we were not too long ago, I was 8 to 10 miles an hour slower on the back straight.
Wow.
Even though I could pull the same cornering speeds, or in some cases maybe even a little bit faster than some of the other competitors that I know that run the class, you still lose a lot of time to them to top speed stuff.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that there's not other advantages to the car. So if you are on a really, really tight, twisty track with a lot of acceleration and braking, this does really, really well. The tighter the track gets, the faster I can get out of those corners because I'm using more of that low end grunt.
That's the sweet spot.
Right. So if I can have a bunch of like 40 to 70 mile an hour bursts on a track, this car just dominates.
Gotcha.
As well, the reason I brought it up here is because I don't have to worry about atmosphere differences.
Right.
So we're going to go down to the Alpine Fest down in Colorado Springs. The other cars are going to be the internal combustion engine cars. Will be at a severe disadvantage from a power perspective.
Sea level to 6,000 feet.
Right. They're going to lose a lot of power. I don't lose anything.
Nothing.
So I will be out there in my full power that I'm used to, and I'm hoping that really helps me in my class.
Very cool. Well, and it seems like the limiting factor of the tires and maybe just the overall build of this car, it's not something where that car all of a sudden just crushes in that class like that. The rule set does actually have an impact on this car.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because over the last 2 years of running this car in this class, I've had some conversations with the technical director of Gridlife. Because I'm not the first that has run a Tesla in Gridlife, but I'm the first that's consistently run this much in one of those cars. And before, they've had issues because it's been kind of cherry-picked events where the car just dominated, like 2 or 3 years ago here, there was a Tesla that dominated the competition in the class. And they kind of kicked him out of the class because they're like, clearly this car doesn't belong in this class.
Right.
But now we've gathered enough data to know the car does kind of belong in the class. It doesn't always win, just like any car out there.
Right.
There are some tracks that it's going to be better at, and some tracks it's going to be worse at.
Strengths and weaknesses.
Like anything. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, and so I'm guessing that as far as like that power delivery, the fact that the power delivery really falls off after 60, I'm guessing that that's not something that can really be changed much.
Not yet.
It's not currently.
Not yet. So if you look at all of the other Tesla race cars that exist, which obviously Unplugged and Mountain Pass Performance, they create some really cool race cars. You're familiar with the Pikes Peak cars that Unplugged does.
Yep.
Those are still stock, I don't want to call it, I'll say computer cars.
Okay.
So they have stripped everything out of it. They've done all kinds of aero. They've reduced the weight where they can, carbon fiber body panels, wheels, tires, brakes, the whole thing. But the thing that you touch, really, that a lot of people touch first in an internal combustion engine car is still stock.
Right.
And they can't do anything.
Like the motivating factors.
Yeah, it's still stock.
Yeah.
And there are some things like, one of the things I run on this car is something called a Partybox. It's something that Mountain Pass Performance makes. And it's in stock form, the traction control, even with track mode where you can have all kinds of power split settings and traction control settings, you still can't shut traction control.
Right.
So you'll go to accelerate out of the tight corner and the car will just say no. And it will literally, like, you'll be foot to the floor and it will give you no power to the motors at all.
Okay.
And sometimes that can be like, it's not going to give you any power until you straighten the steering wheel. And once you have it straight, then it's like, okay, we'll give you power, you can go now.
Very invasive traction.
Right. So the Partybox allows me to tune all that. And it's a really, really cool module that I can go from completely off if I want it, or I can go and adjust on throttle, off throttle, how much power it's going to give me. You can do some torque vectoring stuff with it.
Wow.
It's a pretty cool box that has a pretty simple computer interface to be able to adjust all that stuff. So other than that, the actual motor controls all stock. And currently nothing that I can do to increase power with it.
Well, would you say that level of control, that's something that you are able to tinker with, that like you can't do that in an internal combustion engine car?
Right, not without a really, really advanced system.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about the Partybox on it. It's not that expensive. I think it's maybe about $1,000 or so. But for the level of control that you get in that, that unit alone dropped like multiple seconds off of some of my laps.
Wow.
And the level of customability that you have with that is just not anything I've ever seen on an internal combustion.
Sure. So it's kind of, again, playing to the strengths of the platform,
Right.
And now it's maybe like it's a little kernel of hope that like someday maybe there will be other things that you can change, possibly.
It's coming, and there are a few companies that are at the forefront of motor control systems for these. Not strictly Tesla, but Tesla-like drivetrains. AEM is a pretty cool system that they've been working on that allows full control of basically a standalone for your motor, and how the torque is delivered and how aggressive that torque is delivered, all in trying to figure out the balance between longevity of battery, between the charge, the state of charge, how quickly you go through it,
Sure.
and then how much power you can deliver. So it's getting there, and it's getting exciting to see what electronics companies are doing with this, because it's going to end up to where these are as much of a tuning platform as anything else is, for sure. And if there's anything that's I've understood about these in the last 2 years of running this, is that the future is still going to be a lot of fun. It may be a little bit quieter than what we've become accustomed to, but it's not going to be devoid of driver input and driver excitement and being able to go around a corner, hang your tail out and drift corners. All of that is still going to be around. It's still going to be exciting. It's just going to be a big change as people adopt to it.
So is this a fun car to drive? Like, do you actually have fun in this car on track and enjoy it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say that I haven't been able to build one of these into a full race car yet.
Right.
That is coming. I'm hoping that I'll actually have one full-fledged wheel-to-wheel car for next year.
Okay.
But even in this very stock-ish looking trim, it's a blast to drive. Dynamically, it's awesome. Steering input on this car is fantastic. Like a lot of electric systems, it's a little numb, but in terms of the actual dynamic steer and dynamic feel of it, it's alive, and it's more fun than a lot of other cars I've driven that are kind of this weight and of this era, like a lot of modern BMWs or Mercedes or things like that.
Okay.
This is more fun to drive.
Wow.
And it's just comes with a little bit different challenges.
Right. Well, and one of the things that you mentioned that you've done a lot of work on in this car is suspension.
Mm-hmm.
How much is available? How much can you do? And how much of a change or benefit does going through the suspension on these cars mean?
So that's the cool thing about this. A lot of people think that Teslas are really strange cars. Obviously it's got something different that's propelling it down the road, but it's still a car. All the same suspension principles apply, right? So Tesla still creates a car that has a lot of soft rubber bushings because people don't want to hear a lot of noise when they're driving down the road. So you can address all of those soft bushings with stiffer bushings or bearings to help it make it be more responsive.
Okay.
Just like other modern cars on the road, it's got a lot of stamped steel control arms that are very weak and non-adjustable. So you can go in there, you can replace control arms in order to either make it lighter, stiffer, stronger, or get the adjustability that you need in the suspension to set it up for track use.
Because the car is so heavy, if you replace some of the linkages with like a more rigid aluminum piece or something like that, do you feel more of a difference in this car than with like a car that weighs 1,000, 1,500 pounds less?
I don't think so. It's still heavy no matter what you do.
Okay.
I would be really interested, as I was talking about that race car, to be able to gut one of these and really put it on the diet.
Okay.
Really go crazy with super lightweight composite panels.
Yeah.
Work on some aero, gut the whole thing,
Yeah.
and then actually start with a different model, one that maybe is only rear-wheel drive, so it only has a motor in the back instead of a front and rear motor.
That would
which
also
is
be lighter.
like 500 pounds less. Same battery size, just missing the whole front motor.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, those parts definitely help, but more from the perspective of being able to really dial in the suspension.
Okay.
I mean, this is from a dual duty suspension perspective, one where we take trips. I mean, we go on 1,500 mile trips in this thing. And then also be able to take it on the track. I mean, the only thing I change is the alignment and I change the shock settings.
Wow.
And that's it. And it's amazing. It's super comfortable going down the road. I think because it's still so heavy that you can kind of spring it kind of stiff and have it be nice and comfortable going down the road.
Yeah.
But have it actually work really well on track.
Very cool. So let's say somebody out there that's watching or listening to this is thinking about taking their Tesla to the track, like because it's an electric car, you have to deal with the battery. What are some of the things that you have to kind of keep in mind as you're taking it to the track that you might not have to keep in mind with the gasoline powered car?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you take a gasoline powered car to the track, you're going to go through gas.
Yeah.
You're going to have to stop probably once during the day to go out and get more gas, be that at the track or at an actual station close by.
Yeah.
That's not something you can do in this, obviously. So you have to be able to be prepared to charge it. And depending on the model that you have, the state of charge will drop dramatically. This one, because it's using two motors, it uses a lot of state of charge every time I go out there, to the point where if I go out for my typical one warm-up lap, 2 hot laps, 1 cool-down lap, I can go through 20 to 25% of the charge in that those few laps. So it's a lot.
In like one track session.
One track session, right?
Okay.
And so you've got to be prepared to charge it. So generally, when I bring this car back in after being on a track, I plug it in immediately.
Okay.
Because I have to constantly be charging the car to make sure that it stays as close to 100% as I can get it.
Right.
Unlike an internal combustion engine car, where it doesn't really care how much fuel is in the tank as long as there is some fuel.
Right.
The power drops off the lower the state of charge gets. So, when you get below 80, 75% starts to drop, and then it kind of continuously drops from there, all the way to the point where if you get to about 35%, it'll really drop. I mean, it feels like it loses like 200 horsepower.
Okay, because it's trying to keep you from hitting zero and basically stalling out.
And it's safeguarding the batteries, because if the batteries are a lower state of charge and it's trying to suck too much energy from that battery, it can actually damage the battery.
Okay.
So it's there as a means of protection as well for its own systems.
So when you're going to the track, are you just like looking for was it a 220 outlet or something, or is it something beyond that?
No, that's basically it. And the great thing about most tracks is most tracks are set up to have RVs for people who camp.
Right.
And most RV plugs are 50 amp setups, the 240 volt 50 amp plug. Some of them are 30 amp that are also 240 volt. Either one of those will pretty much keep it, 50 amp definitely will keep it charged up throughout the day.
Oh, wow.
30 amp will be a little bit slower, but it's pretty much enough to keep it charged throughout the whole day.
So a track that has electrical connections for RVs, most likely you're going to be just fine.
And that's what I do. So when I'm going to a track, there's a little bit of pre-work that I have to do to make sure that I have access to that.
Yeah.
So either I will be calling the track and saying, hey, do you have this 50 amp hookup for an RV? Where are they located? Just so that I know that I can get one. Do I have to reserve one in advance?
Right.
Some tracks you do, some tracks you don't.
Okay.
The GridLife stuff, they always sell the RV hookups for the weekend, so I always make sure that I buy out an RV hookup. Works out. I stay in my trailer, so I have to power my trailer anyway, so I power the trailer and the car typically at the same time. So it works out well. So it really is, it's pretty easy once you get there.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is, outside of making sure that it stays charged, there's really nothing else you have to do outside of the standard stuff. Make sure you don't have loose suspension joints, make sure that your brakes are in proper order.
Tires are still in good shape.
Right, and outside of that, you never have to check oil. You're never checking transmission fluid, you're never checking rear end fluid or messing with any of that stuff.
Because it doesn't really have those things.
Spark plugs you never have to worry about again, you don't have to worry about turbos going out on you. The maintenance on this has been far less than I've been accustomed to, and I race a lot of different cars.
Even tracking.
even tracking.
Okay.
So I have yet to even change the fluid in the motors.
Wow.
So it's still the factory fill fluid, about 2 years old.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to do that this winter. Change this. There's filters on each motor and also
Okay.
fluid. I'm going to do a drain and fill in the fluid and change the filters. But
Okay.
I still have not done that.
That doesn't sound like a bad deal.
It's not, honestly. And other than going through brake pads because it's heavy, and tires because it's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest consumable, honestly, that you have. The other great thing that a lot of people don't think about, and this is definitely not going to last forever, but right now I like to kind of bring up and laugh at my friends who are constantly dropping more E85 into their tanks. I generally, in a lot of the tracks I go to, I don't have to pay for the power hookup. A lot of times it's just there and available.
Okay.
So the track is paying for my power.
Wow.
Or the entry fee is paying for the power, or somebody else.
The rental of the space, yeah.
So right now, I mean, that will change because as these become more popular, you're going to pay more and more for electricity to power them. But, currently it's also nice to
I guess kind of related to that makes me wonder if there's talk about putting like Tesla fast charge stations at tracks and stuff like that. Would that make a big difference? Or is it just really actually not that big of a deal to just plug into the RV outlets?
That'll make a huge difference when it comes to the number of these cars that you start to see on track.
Okay.
Because right now, in most events, I'm the only one there.
Okay.
So it's very easy for me to continue to power the car. If they started putting superchargers in at every track, though, and you would start to see more of these cars show up for sure, because people would not be so concerned about keeping them charged.
You would know that there's supercharger.
Plenty of power available. Even if there was only one supercharger at a track, that would be enough to keep multiple Teslas going for the day.
Sure.
Because the charge time is so fast. But places like Laguna Seca, Laguna Seca's got a whole bank of Tesla chargers that they put in. I think they've got 8 or 12 of them that are out there now. Tracks are starting to pick it up.
Okay.
Tracks are starting to understand that, much like we are, the future's coming, things are changing, they got to be prepared.
So knowing that, having the experience that you've had in this car and actually track the car and knowing, like even just getting a glimpse of like what is starting to become possible as far as like the performance and the tuning aspect of these cars. What is your thought knowing that this is the direction that cars are moving to the electrical era?
There will always be a part of me that really loves internal combustion. I like the complex system. I think that's very cool, just how far that technology has progressed over the years and the fact that it can still power a car or a race car or whatever. And obviously, I love the sounds of some of them.
Sure.
Not all of them, but some of them sound great. So there's a bit of me that will miss that for sure on track. But I think the future is still really exciting, for what these are. And one of the benefits of not having that noise when you're out on track is it really allows you to hear the other stuff that's going on with the car. So, you're always trying as a driver, trying to be in tune to the car. What is the car telling you about your driving? How is the car feeding back that information to you? Tires are obviously a critical part of that. With a loud internal combustion engine, sometimes it's hard to hear what the tires are doing.
Right.
In this car, it's so quiet when you're out on track that you can hear the individual tires. And it's like they're talking to you about what's going on. You're leaning on me too hard, stop.
Yep.
Or I've got more to give, turn in a little bit harder. Go a little bit faster. Because you can really hear, even with the helmet on, you can really hear what the car is doing.
Do you ever find yourself getting back in an internal combustion engine car and like, I can't hear the tires anymore? Getting annoyed at the engine note?
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Okay.
Most of the other internal combustion engine cars I drive now are really for the race, or really for endurance purposes. Okay. So the outright performance is important, but it's not like Time Attack where you're setting that one super fast lap. So it's more about consistency in those cars. So you feel the feedback, and I don't know, it's like, riding a bike or something. You get back into one of those cars and you drive it, and you're immediately back in the mode of shifting throttle and the noises that it makes and everything else. And it's just part of the experience of driving that kind of car.
Well, that's because you've had that experience, but it seems like, one, there is a potentially bright future with this change. And for people that don't have the experience of tracking the internal combustion engines, there could be a whole nother generation of people that like, this is where they come in, this is what they're familiar with, and that's just what they like and what they expect.
And they're going to have a good time with it. And it is a lot of fun. There's still a lot of people that don't quite get it.
Yeah.
That say, I'll never do, an electric vehicle. I used to say the same things about automatic transmissions when I was a kid. I'll never own an automatic transmission. You know, I always want something on a stiff suspension so it handles really well. And now that I've gotten older, you know, I just want the most comfortable, quiet thing that I can put on the street because I don't want to be annoyed by all that stuff anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, once people get a feel for what it has to offer, they start to forget about that stuff.
Sure.
You know, ultimately, if you are a driver and you want to be driving a car, you're not going to care really what you're in. If you get the opportunity to get out on track and drive and have a good time and feel the car at the limit, then for a driver, that is what they really want.
And it's encouraging to know that there's still something that this platform and the electric cars have to offer in that direction. Right. And hopefully, fingers crossed, manufacturers of these cars will just want to lean into that even more going forward.
It's gonna come. It's gonna happen even more than it is. I mean, Tesla really is the main performance-focused brand right now when it comes to EVs.
Right.
But there's a lot. There's a lot coming.
Yeah, especially on the high end. Yeah, there's changes on the horizon for that.
There's a lot coming, and it's only going to get better. The battery technology is only going to get better. It's only going to become faster to charge. It's going to have higher range and more capacity in the batteries. Cars are going to get faster. I mean, it's hard to imagine something like a Model S Plaid, going faster than that already. It will. I mean, that's just the progress of technology.
I'm curious to find out. I'm looking forward to see what happens 5 years from now. What are the possibilities?
Yeah,
what can we explore?
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Tony, thank you for bringing Tesla out here. Thanks for giving us your experience, talking us through what it's like to track one of these things.
Sure.
I'm not sure I'm converted yet, but I'm certainly curious. I'd like to get out there and try.
Get you out on track so you can try it.
Nice. Well, thanks so much. Thanks to you guys at home for watching. Appreciate your support as always. And until next time, stay tuned with Flutter and Tuning.